In 1919, Easter Seals began offering services for children living with disabilities. Our founder, Edgar Allen, was a businessman and Rotarian in northern Ohio, who, after losing his son in an accident, led the construction of a hospital which became a temporary home for many children with disabilities. Allen met 10-year-old Jimmy Bodak, who was at the hospital to be fitted for crutches. When Jimmy asked if he could call him Daddy, he realized how lonely Jimmy was without his family and immediately went to work. He surveyed local communities to find out how many children with disabilities lived in the area and discovered hundreds, but fewer in school or playing in their neighborhoods. He mobilized fellow Rotarians, successfully lobbied the Ohio legislature for funding, and started a national movement to create awareness about and provide medical and therapy services for kids with disabilities. Today, nearly 100 years later, Easter Seals works to make Allen's vision of a world where everyone has opportunities to live, learn, work, and play in their communities a reality. We serve more than 1.4 million individuals with disabilities and their families through a network of service providers around the world. We're advocates and innovators, and we're passionate about creating solutions that improve the lives of children and adults living with disabilities. Easter Seals wants to change the world so people living with disabilities can live the lives they choose, without barriers to education, health care, employment, transportation, and housing. Today, 1 in every 5 Americans lives with a disability, and 1 in 4 adults with a disability lives in poverty. We're creating solutions and changing lives through innovative therapy, education, employment and support services, and as advocates for legislation and funding of critical services. Easter Seals provides services for people with disabilities through more than 70 affiliates in the communities across the country. We begin by asking what each individual wants to achieve and tailor services to meet unique needs. Our staff of physical, occupational, and speech therapists, teachers, physicians, social workers, employment specialists, and camp directors is committed to innovation. Whether it's programming an iPad to help a nonverbal child communicate, fabricating a heat-sensitive stylus so someone with cerebral palsy can text, or incorporating new therapies to speed progress, Easter Seals professionals are always looking for the next best proven approach. And if they can't find what they need, they create it. We also partner with people with disabilities and their families to advocate for legislation that ensures equal access and guarantees civil rights for all Americans. Easter Seals is a trusted name among the people we serve, our donors, policymakers, and the general public. This is something we treasure and protect because it opens doors and creates opportunities for Easter Seals to partner with other organizations and companies. We also work in coalitions to advocate and create networks of support so people with disabilities have easy access to the services they need. When we measure success, we look at the number of children who've learned to walk and talk, adults who found jobs, veterans who've successfully transitioned home, and older adults who are aging in place. Every year, we make a big difference in 1.5 million lives. When we include the volunteers, donors, and advocates who join us, we add another 3 million friends. We measure our impact as advocates, promoting legislation and funding for programs that provide services and supports for people with disabilities. And we exceed the Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Alliance standards every year. Many people think Easter Seals only serves children. We do so much more. People don't know about our services for military service members, veterans, and their families, such as training for caregivers, child care, employment, respite, and camping programs. Most people recognize Easter seals from the seals we send in the mail each spring, but they don't know that we offer services through more than 500 sites to more than 1 million people with disabilities across the lifespan. Throughout almost a century of service, Easter Seals has a lot to be proud of. As service providers, Easter Seals is the nation's largest nonprofit provider of early intervention services for young children, serving thousands annually. We've become the largest provider of services for people living with autism of all ages, and we're a major source of employment training for young people living with disabilities and for veterans. With Easter Seals Brain Health Center, we're sharing new research, tools, and proven brain training exercises that will have enormous potential for generations to come. As advocates, including funding for children with disabilities in the first Social Security Act, developing the first standards for accessible buildings in the 1960s, passing key legislation such as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. As innovators, creating the model for inclusive child care centers and adult day programs, and developing and sharing expertise in accessible transportation. Funding services is a constant challenge. Federal and state programs have never fully met people's needs. Too many adults with disabilities can't find meaningful employment. Too many of our seniors are isolated. Another constant is being culturally sensitive to our nation's changing demographics. As our nation's healthcare system continues to evolve, we'll need to effectively communicate everything we offer as a service provider. With your help and additional resources, Easter Seals can reach out to many more families who need early identification and therapy for young children, employment programs that make it possible to be self-supporting, caregiving for adults living with disabilities, and a robust Easter Seals Brain Health Center with emerging assessments and exercises for everyone who wants to train or retrain their brain. We are proud of Easter Seals' role as an advocate and resource for people with disabilities. We would love to tackle the stigma people with disabilities face and celebrate what children and adults with disabilities can do. It's time to finally eliminate the attitudinal barriers that keep children and adults with disabilities out of the mainstream, because we know what they can do when we expect great things. With additional resources, we could start a national conversation about high expectations. Finally, we'd love to promote the sharing of expertise to meet the needs of people living with disabilities globally. We know there is an interest and a need. We invite you to invest in Easter Seals. Your gift really matters.